So if I say the word Hermes, what imagery comes to mind? Because for me, the first things that come to mind is that of the Hermes Birkin, the Kelly, and the Constance. Yes, the most coveted bags of the fashion house, the holy grails, if you will. And on the other hand of that comes the word Birkin bait, or the game, because I think it's well known, even if it's an unwritten rule, that to get those aforementioned bags, that you have to play a little bit of a game. You have to climb the ladder, if you will, in order to have the opportunity to be presented with the offer of buying one of these illustrious bags. Now, why do I bring this little thought experiment up, you might ask? Well, it seems like our beloved Hermes has actually landed itself into a little bit of legal hot water, because at the time of filming, Hermes has actually found itself to be the recipient of a class action lawsuit, at least in the state of California, and we're going to talk about these allegations. Regular viewers of this channel will know that I've not been shy about my opinions on Hermes, especially the Birkin bags, because I personally think that it looks a bit boring. It's a bit overrated as well in the fact that everybody wants one. But that aside, I do have to acknowledge that this brand is super coveted and exclusive and valuable for good reason, because of the history, the heritage, the craftsmanship, and the fact that they do incredibly well in resale because they are so exclusive and because there are unwritten rules around how to buy them, aka the game. And so even if I have personal opinions about Hermes and indeed these bags that I've mentioned, I cannot deny that the Hermes brand is strong, not just from a societal perspective in regards to its desirability and popularity, but also its financial performance, because Lord knows, during COVID especially, where brands were struggling to make ends meet, that Hermes was one of, if not potentially the only brand that was doing notoriously well year on year. And it's a testament, whether we like it or not, to the success of the Hermes brand as a result of these games or practices, right? And so, of course, as a self-professed luxury lover and somebody who's very interested in this space and pays attention to it as well, I wanted to talk about today's news with you. And of course, there are many, many articles covering this particular case. I'm just going to be showing you the article from Fortune because I found it to be the most comprehensive. And of course, at this moment in time, the lawsuit has only, at the time of filming, been brought maybe like 3 or 4 days ago. So obviously information is still very fresh. It's a little bit scarce. Let's talk about this Fortune article. And of course, the title is "The Birkin Bag Rules. 2 Californians sue Hermes, alleging their money wasn't good enough, even after one of them spent tens of thousands of dollars on the brand." At the top here, we've got the fact that the Birkin bag is undeniably, of course, the ultimate status symbol. We've talked about this many times over. It's well known in the community that if anybody could dream up their Holy Grail bag, it would probably be that of Hermes. And these bags are not cheap, not just in their purchase, but also in their resale, because they can start from about $8,000 on a good day if you were to buy it from the store, up until the $250,000, $500,000. With this exclusivity and these games and things, of course, someone is going to be unhappy about it. And it just so happens that in a complaint filed in a federal court in Northern California, 2 shoppers allege the French luxury house Hermes violated antitrust and business practice laws by only offering Birkin handbags to customers who already had a purchase history with the brand. They actually allege that Hermes executed a scheme to exploit the market power of the Birkin by requiring consumers to purchase ancillary products before they will be given an opportunity to purchase the bag. So I'll just pause there because a bit of jargon that has been mentioned. Ancillary products is essentially all the other items that you have to buy to be able to buy the actual thing that you want. Okay, so in this particular example, they wanted the Birkin bag, but what they had to do is buy lots of sprinkling of other little trinkets like the pet supplies, the homeware, the menswear, the leather goods. From what I understand, based on other customers or just from murmurings on the fashion community, sales associates actually aren't incentivized to shift Birkins, Kellys or Constances because they don't actually get anything in return, especially if they're not making that much on a base salary. So with that in mind, they are, however, incentivized with potentially lucrative sales commissions on the rest of the items. You can put 2 and 2 together and see that, in other words, customers are coerced into purchasing ancillary products from Hermes by virtue of wanting to purchase the Birkin handbags. the filing reads. This is anti-competitive tying conduct. And thankfully, the article does go down to clarify, if you're not a lawyer, like I'm certainly not. As a side note, that's a disclaimer. I'm not giving legal advice. I'm just talking about allegations. Everything's alleged, okay? We're not trying to get sued out here. But the practice of tying purchases is actually where a brand will artificially inflate the cost of acquiring their items, so in this case, a Birkin bag, and limit consumer choice. And this violates federal and state antitrust laws, at least in California, and the California Business and Professions Code. As of this current point of filming, Hermes has not responded to the lawsuit, nor do they respond to Fortune's request for comment, and I have perused other articles from the New York Post, The Independent. They have also declined to answer, or at least just not acknowledged. Further down in the article, we have a little bit more information around what these plaintiffs are alleging in this lawsuit, which I believe is class action, so anyone could join potentially in the state of California, but at least as it pertains to these two individuals. So one of the plaintiffs contacted Hermes about purchasing another Birkin bag, but was told specialty bags were going to clients who have been consistent in supporting our business. And the other plaintiff had made multiple attempts to purchase a Birkin, but was told on each occasion he needed to purchase other items and accessories, the filing reads. Then the article details further the unwritten practices, if you will, of buying from Hermes. It is well documented, even on YouTube, Instagram, etc., people's journeys of buying these coveted Holy Grail handbags, least of all the Birkin, of course, which is at the top of the rung. But, you know, it's well known that you have to prove loyalty through the most obvious means possible, and that is through spending money. And while there is no specified dollar amount to spend at Hermes, you can speculate it's in the tens of thousands. Obviously, it would make the most sense, especially from a sales associate who is not really earning a lot on base salary potentially, or as it is at least incentivized to sell based on commissions, that they would allocate these bags, which are already scarce. There's not that many in production, that gets allocated to certain stores, which I believe this article actually details. Actually, you know, Hermes only allows boutiques to purchase a select number of Birkins on a biannual basis, and the style of Birkin bag delivered to boutiques is rarely known ahead of time. So if they only have so many, they're naturally going to prioritize who gets them to their most loyal customers, and those loyal customers will spend, you guessed it, more money. This game is so well known that it is inextricably tied to the Hermes brand, and it's what I believe makes Hermes Hermes, because it is so hard to get. And that is why Hermes bags can command so much money, not just in the actual sale from the brand directly, but on the resale market as well. They can go for 3-4x at a bare minimum. People do well to remember that as well, because even though these plaintiffs are clearly upset around the practices, and rightly so to a certain degree, they are still participating, or at least did up until this point, in a game that they were willing to play. At least one of them had success, right? Had one Birkin, and probably many other things. I think a lot of people would do well to remember that Hermes is only considered at this stage anyway to be at the top of the luxury fashion totem pole, if you will, because they have these games. While I'm by no means somebody who likes to play games in a wider sense of life, least of all when I'm trying to have a luxury experience, I cannot deny that it works on people, or rather that people are willing to play the game of their own consent and of their own volition, because we are all consenting adults that are buying here. No one forced you to buy products, even if that is a strong suggestion. This is what is making the brand so appealing. I just think it's really interesting that these plaintiffs are making this case, because I think in another world where they actually got the bags, we wouldn't have this case, or at least it wouldn't be these individuals making this case. It's obviously, from the bird's eye view, it looks pretty bad for Hermes, at least, you know, practice that was unwritten. It's now written, but I do think we are missing valuable information about these individuals, and I think just to exemplify what I mean by that, first of all, I noticed that these are, I think, both men, so unless they're buying these bags for their significant others, wives or girlfriends, are they perhaps resellers? Because it's not something typically in the nature of luxury, it's more directed towards women. They're the target audience. It's just not something that men gravitate towards naturally anyway. Obviously exceptions, but no rule. And you don't know actually how they treated certain sales associates. You also don't know the depth of relationship that they had, you know, if they were being demanding or whatnot. I'm just not so quick to side on anyone at this point in time until there is further information, because they were very happy to play this game up until they didn't win. So now that we've talked about the allegations of this lawsuit, let's talk about why this actually matters. Why is this lawsuit significant? Well, first off, I think that this is a milestone lawsuit for a luxury fashion house, at least for Hermes, that kind of brings a light to this tactic of creating exclusivity, desirability, all these tying tactics, right? Everybody knew this was a practice that was unwritten, and now it's actually been brought to the light and it has legal repercussions, potentially legal, financial, reputational consequences. And while this is a tactic that has been long speculated, that other brands have also participated in and continue to participate in, they've not had anything being brought to legal attention by plaintiffs as of this point. I think a lot of other brands will be watching and waiting in the wings to see how this plays out. Certainly I as a consumer as well want to see how this plays out. And obviously this matters because up until this point, acquiring a Birkin, a Kelly Constance, anything from Hermes is very exclusive, and because of this image of something that is untouchable, there is an element, I feel, of the thrill of the chase. There is that of being a trophy, right? Because while some people might get lucky in a boutique, they get on with somebody or play the Paris lottery and the boutiques there. On the whole, you have to really work with sales associates to be able to be offered this bag. But not only that, you've got to spend your money. You've got to spend it on the right things. While that's not some people's cup of tea, it's certainly not mine. For many others, it's something they enjoy. And there are hundreds, if not thousands of videos on YouTube alone where people are documenting their Hermes journeys, and they like it, and that to them is what makes them happy. I think that this is very significant because actually the thing that defines Hermes is this game, is this exclusivity, and that has only really been maintained and differentiating from other brands because of these practices. If luxury brands are no longer allowed, or it's problematic and is in a grey area to do this, this is going to have real world consequences, not just for Hermes and the way that they market and sell, but also on other brands as well. It really will put into question a lot of industry standards and consumer expectations when it comes to buying things. And it's going to get to a point where, you know, as a silly example, you want to go to the grocery store, buy some eggs, but it turns out you're going to need to buy the milk, the flour, the cheese before you get the opportunity to be offered the chance to buy an egg. And obviously I can understand why people are disgruntled, because I do personally think it is a bit ridiculous and a bit insulting, to be honest, that you can't just go into the store, see one of the model items on the shelf and buy it, because Lord knows Hermes is the most high traffic museum that you've ever been to. There's so many bags, Birkins of course, that are there that they just say you cannot buy. And actually this is a really good place in the video to pivot to what I believe this lawsuit's impact will be on Hermes as a brand. Hermes's image, its exclusivity, and its emotional and financial performance and dominance has really been attributed to these alleged practices. Hermes has not acknowledged these allegations, at least at the time of filming, and they haven't even responded to this lawsuit at all. And so assuming that the brand maintains its silence and even denies these allegations of tying of sales, then I do believe that their brand image is still relatively protected, I will say. For a lot of diehard fans of the brand who have been loyal through the years and love Hermes so much, everything in their house is Hermes basically, I think that they will still be a customer of Hermes, and if anything, it may reinforce the brand eminence and the exclusivity. If Hermes continues to stay the course and doesn't backtrack on these practices, then I think what makes Hermes quintessentially Hermes is gone. And what then differentiates it from the likes of Chanel, etc. Because I think quality, while a very compelling and impactful point when it comes to the pricing, etc., if you don't have that layer of exclusivity of these games, then it naturally becomes a little bit too easy to buy. And therefore the investment value goes down, the emotional value goes down, people are less likely to chase after these bags. And I think there is something inherently psychological that we are all affected by, and it's a topic that I've covered in great detail in other videos on my channel, because there are certain parts of us that want to get something as a show of success, that have these items as trophies, and luxury goods, especially a handbag, is one of these so-called Veblen goods. There is a Veblen effect, essentially detailing these scarce but very high value goods. It's naturally something that not many people can get. It is hard to get. It is expensive to get. The harder it is to get, the more people want it. There's just something about the psychology of wanting something that you cannot have. That is something that I think is, again, very, very distinctive in Hermes, but will cease to exist if they do away with those practices or anything like that. And I actually believe it's just going to continue and reinforce why people like the brand. And you may even get others that double down on buying from the brand. I do think that Hermes actually has a good case in regards to ignoring or even denying these allegations, because from what I have learned online through videos and other accounts from customers of the brand, there are instances, many instances in fact, of individuals that have managed to get a Birkin, Kelly or Constance by pure luck, it seems. They managed to find a good sales associate that likes them, or just so happened there was one in that day, whatever the reason might be. This clearly shows that Hermes is still a brand that you can buy from, even if you have no buying history, even if you have no relationships. And so it really does go against this tying practice that is being alleged here, because if that were really truly the case, then these individuals that have gotten lucky, that are showing their Hermes purchases and scores that they've gotten online, wouldn't have these stories to tell. And I also believe in this vein that while it is an unwritten rule, or there's a certain game that everyone is aware of that needs to be played, allegedly, the fact that it has never been written down, there's been no documentation leaked or shared, and the fact that there are stories that seem almost random actually indicates to me that there maybe aren't tying standards, or it could just be on a case-by-case basis of the sales associates who are not acting as the brand, because clearly other people have managed to get things from the brand without playing a game. But again, I think assuming this lawsuit doesn't gain any legs, let's say that they throw it out of court, that, they settle outside of court potentially, as long as it doesn't gain legs, there are no further plaintiffs that join a class action lawsuit, because I do believe that you can, either in the state of California, or it doesn't become national or perhaps international, then Hermes will be fine. And the fact that, even at this moment in time, it's not like people are doing a mass boycott or anything like that. Whereas conversely with Chanel, there have been such things in the past, as with other brands. I think that speaks volumes to its status, its reputation going forward. Let's now pivot from talking about Hermes to actually what this will mean for competitors, because we all know that there are a lot of brand reps from Chanel, from Louis Vuitton, other brands that are essentially watching and waiting with bated breath as to how this plays out, because obviously Hermes has been the first mover, if you will, in this game, and the first lawsuit, at least of its kind, specifically in this industry. Also, I do think that they're going to be adopting a kind of watch and learn approach to maybe improve certain maybe practices, written or unwritten. And Chanel obviously is a brand that has been brought up for emulating a lot of Hermes practices, because it's usually a game of Hermes and Chanel bags of who's the top spot, what's the holy grail. And obviously Chanel has been well known, and I've documented this myself, they've engaged in quotas for their bags, price rises, exclusivity on, certain bags that you can buy as well. Clearly, people are trying to carve themselves into a niche where they are a cut above the rest. But I do think that this is going to be a landmark case if it does gain legs, or if there is a decision at the end, that will potentially have a ripple effect across the luxury fashion industry. And also it takes the heat off of them as well if they've been under fire, and they're going to tweak their practices perhaps based on the results of the ruling. And so I'm sure a lot of these brands will find new creative ways to maintain their exclusivity amongst their clients without getting into legal trouble. And then outside of that, I do think that there will be a potentially broader discussion about industry norms and customer expectations when it comes to buying in luxury. Because the whole point of buying luxury isn't just getting something and going home with it, right? You could do that online, but the whole in-store experience in particular is something that is luxurious. It's a treat, it's a milestone, and it's something that is being taken away day by day, and almost insults the customer in a certain way by the fact that you can't just get the item that you want and enjoy yourself there. You feel kind of stressed out that you have to play this game. I do believe for a lot of brands that if they don't strike this balance and they keep erring in this grey area, especially as it relates to tying practices, then they could get a lot of disgruntled customers as well. But that being said, I do believe actually that there is a big opportunity for other up-and-coming brands, or just other competitors as well, to enter into a space where clearly a lot of brands are trying to set themselves up above the rest of an audience that is disgruntled but are still willing to spend their disposable income on luxury goods that other brands could target. And if they manage to release a line within their brand that caters to this audience, that is accessible, that is high quality, then they will buy into that. And now let's move on to talking about the impact on Hermes customers, new and existing. Now, like I've mentioned before, I think if everything stays relatively the same and the lawsuit doesn't gain any legs, I do think that loyal customers of the fashion house will probably be fine with it. In fact, the bags will probably be a lot more coveted since they are individuals that played the game well and won and have all of these trophies of Birkins, etc. And I think that a lot of individuals will take those plaintiffs potentially to be just basically sore losers. Now, that being said, I do think that for newer customers to the house, ones that have only bought seldom or ones that do want to buy, and I think if these allegations are taken further and they actually have legs, and if they're proven true, or even if the brand, you know, responds with an apology or reverses these games, I actually think that some individuals will lose a bit of respect for the brand, that the bags are not as coveted anymore. And then there's also people, of course, that are naturally disgruntled by playing the game, and that this lawsuit will just cement the fact that their practices are allegedly insidious. When it comes to my own personal attitude towards game playing or buying from brands, if I don't like something, I just won't buy it. And if I have nothing nice to say, I will say nothing at all. Again, this will depend on other details of the case that we don't know yet, around the details of why they got rejected as well as their own behaviors, but nobody is forcing you. Everybody's a grown, consenting adult. Had they been successful, we wouldn't necessarily be seeing these individuals raising this case. I think that in itself is a little bit of an irony, if you will, because they're just disgruntled customers that didn't get their way, and by entering into this exchange, if you will, spending all this money, you knew exactly what you were getting into, and just because you didn't like the outcome doesn't mean you can then go around suing people. I'm not saying that they don't have a case to be made. Of course, any practices by which you genuinely have to buy other things to get something else is a bit ridiculous, to say the least. The fact that they were willing to play up until this point, and then they were salty basically because they didn't get the items, is a little bit childish to me. Hermes, they have, I'm sure, a cracking legal team, very extensive, that probably gets a lot of these all the time. They can weather the storm. But other smaller brands or individuals, they cannot. And so I think this might be taking a bit far. I don't know if it's maybe a cultural thing that in the US, I think people get sued more often than in the UK. I also think it's a little bit cheeky. I don't know what they're trying to get from this. Do they want damages? Is it emotional? Because it certainly wasn't like a physical damage or anything like that. And financially, it's questionable because they made the decision to buy. If they think that they're really going to get a Birkin or Kelly or Constance after this, I think they are pretty delusional, because they are probably blacklisted from many boutiques, if not globally. But I think overall the main takeaway is that we should all be discerning customers when it comes to buying. I think this is a real cautionary tale of what societal and peer pressure gets you, and I personally am not somebody that likes to follow trends. This is an example of why, because if you don't get what you want, you feel like you have basically sunk cost fallacy and you've got to double down into it. And I think to make it your life's mission perhaps to try and damage a brand or an individual's perhaps is not a good place to be in your life. You should only buy things because you like them, not because it shows that you've made it to other people, or because it looks great on your arm because it's so valuable and this, that and the other. It might give you a good buzz for like 10 seconds, but then it's on to the next thing, and there's a never-ending high, a never-ending dragon that you'll need to chase. And I think that this is an example of someone whose chase went wrong and the game didn't go their way. With Hermes, it's a bit of a mania with it. I don't think that's healthy. And even for me as a customer at Chanel, I've massively decreased my activity, if you will, in regards to my relationships there, my activities there, because there are just other important things in life to worry about. There's just so much more to life than just bags. But anyways, that is all the information and the thoughts that I have at this moment in time. Of course, if anything else comes out, I will make an addendum or add maybe another video and we'll talk about it a little bit more. But I would love to know your thoughts down in the comments. Do you think that this lawsuit has legs? Do you think it is justified? What do you think the repercussions are for Hermes or indeed other brands? And will you be buying from them if you haven't already before? I'd love to know. But anyways, I will leave this video here. Thank you as always for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.